What's up, everybody? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic.
I'm Jammin John.
And we have yet another album review for you. And this is a debut album, so we got a fresh new band for you guys to check out here. So we're going to go over this debut album by one Vaticinal Rites, Cascading Memories of Immortality. This also comes out on the 10th of May on Everlasting Spew Records. It's been formed in 2020 in London, England. This, again, is their debut full-length. I actually went over their self-titled EP a little while ago in a collection update, and I really dug it, and that's kind of why we're doing this one. And I'd say this is just like kind of straight up old school death metal with a fierce Floridian tinge to it.
Yeah, until you told me these guys were from London, I would have sworn they were from Florida. I've never heard of them, but I have seen their name pop up a bunch on Facebook because Tito talked at great length about them, so I figured, yeah, why not go over it?
So since I had actually listened to their EP, I had like a good beat on what this band was about. And honestly, it is kind of just a more expanded version of what they did on the EP with some new wrinkles here and there. Very Floridian, first off. Like lots of Morbid Angel, I would say monstrosity and brutality kind of mixed in there. Tons of thrashy riffs, and honestly, the tone itself, the guitar tone has this big, thrashy crunch to it.
Yeah, that was pretty much the very first thing I wrote was crunchy, thrashy guitars.
Yeah, the production here is very crisp. It doesn't, necessarily have like kind of that, grittiness that you'd expect from like Floridian death metal, at least the earlier stuff. But, it's more modern, but it still has a good punch to it, and especially the guitars. The guitars are out front and center, and man, is this a riffy album. Like, tons of riff changes, lots of like intricate shifts, and frequently harmonized nasty riffs, and just tremolos, chugs, like kind of everything you'd expect from just flat out old school, very Floridian death metal from London, England.
And not only very thrashy, but very groovy too. Tons of groove all over this record. And the drummer is doing a great job to create that groove. And not only does this guy stay in the pocket, because it's important for drummers to stay in the pocket, but he accents nearly everything. Huge Gene Hoglan vibes. The way he chooses to wind himself in and out of these crazy riffs, because every song, 20 riffs a song, easily. The way he chooses to accent things or come in on different beats or what have you, it's like flashy but not at the same time.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, for the most part, like, there isn't, like, songs that are specifically like, all right, this is, like, the blastier, faster one, or this is the more slow and brooding one. It's often a big mix. Like, you do have some standout songs that kind of hang on to one thing mostly, but there's inevitably, like, some cool riff changes and tempo shifts coming up in them. And I kind of like that. Like, this album kind of keeps you guessing, even though a lot of the stuff on here is very much like just heavily ingrained in death metal in general. Again, especially very Floridian death metal. There are frequent moments where they get into thrashy gallops, and often that is accompanied by like a very shreddy dive bomb laden lead. But you also get your more slow brooding tracks like Corporeal Affliction. That song latches right on to the tentacled teat of Morbid Angel and just stays there. Tremolo harmonies, slow, evil, but it's also going wild on the double bass. It's just a brooding, ugly song. And I gotta say, I love the vocals on here. The vocals just are kind of like just a powerful roar.
Although it's not without its fair share of screams. In Siphoning Plasma from the Gods, there's a big blackened scream right before the tapping lead. There's a lot of yelling. At one point, there's like whispering and yells that appear in Asphyxiation of Ecstasy. There's a point where there's yells and screams and whispers, and they're all mixed at different levels in the mix, so it's kind of like coming at you from all sides.
And there's a lot of, like, riff variety on here. Like, this doesn't necessarily stay on that thrashy death metal kick the entire time. Like, there's some more doom-laden moments. There's some blackened, cold tremolos that show up on Bowels of Gargantua and Asphyxiation of Ecstasy. These song titles are quite wild. But one of the ones that really just kind of caught me was Siphoning Plasma from the Gods. Not only because that song title is just, I don't know what that is. I didn't know you could do that to gods. I didn't know they had plasma.
Well, now you know.
Right now I know. That song is kind of flat out epic. There is a section towards the end that flat out reminds me of Nile. Like, it has some Middle Eastern-ish flourishes to it, but it's the vibe. It's the big, epic, sinister, like, the God Emperor has come out to greet his subjects. pretty much just to tell them, like, listen, you're all born to die for me, build me a pyramid.
And one of the biggest, nastiest breakdowns is also in Siphoning Plasma from the Gods. That big Meshuggah breakdown, just,
Yeah, heavy syncopation, dude, it's just a beastly groove, like, kind of decapitated-esque at points, too. And that more epic vibe shows up later in the album, the title track, which is a 7-minute monster of a closer that kind of goes all over. Like, it's a riff buffet of stylistic shifts. Like, it gets a little bit more proggy and technical. There's some really awesome drum patterns on there that, once again, remind me heavily of Gene Hoglan. But you have a little bit of black metal. There's some progressive flourishes in there, too. There's a lot of harmonies on there that scream death. And kind of, like, all over death. Like, I got a lot of, like, spiritual healing, but, you know, with the drum patterns and such, and those clever harmonies, a little bit of individual thought patterns in there too. Either way, I'm getting death, so I'm not upset at all at that.
I mean, there's a lot of harmonies all over this record. Don't think for a minute that it's only in the last song. Bowels of Gargantuan has this really awesome descending harmony riff. Unhinged Cataclysm has a really awesome harmonized lead. I mean, pretty much they throw in a harmony wherever they can throw in a harmony, and that's really cool.
Yeah, no, the harmonies are very tasteful, and I like that they kind of just accent the moment, because I don't know, it kind of shifts from being like, you know, just kind of brutal and heavy to more sinister to, again, there's more epic moments on here. And there's like a fair amount of melody that shows up, like bordering on some mellow death moments, just kind of peppered in to sort of, I don't know if like lighten the mood is the word, but rather to just give you like a little bit of an earworm there that isn't just like a rhythmic pummeling of just chuggy riffs, because that is a good chunk of this. Outside of the riffs, like the big thing that I really enjoyed on here is rhythmically, it is a lot of fun to listen to. Like the drum work in here, I think is awesome. Like there's a couple of moments where I'd say the drummer gets a little bit too busy, like trying to squeeze in as many hits in a point. Like there's a couple of snare rolls that kind of pop up in a blast beat that I don't think necessarily fit. Like they feel like they're shoehorned in, but for the most part, tasteful accents, really cool grooves. Like they're not like super standard, but there's also a lot of just good in the pocket drumming, and that kind of just gives this album a really good flow from track to track. It's very technical, but it's also just like kind of a good headbanging album too. And I also like the fact that while this is very transition happy, especially in the riff changes, because there are tons per song, it also is good about repeating solid hooks. Like there's great tremolo harmonies that pop up to sort of like just anchor a good melody often. And when the song needs like a good chuggy moment or a solid kind of breakdown halftime groove, this band is quick to supply it. Now there are some things on here that I didn't care for that much, and all right, it's not like kind of all encompassing across the lead work, but one major thing on the lead work that kind of got to be a bit much were dive bombs. Holy shit. There are a lot of dive bombs on here.
There are a lot of dive bombs, and sometimes they don't only appear in leads, but they appear at times where I don't think there needs to be a dive bomb. Siphoning Plasma from the Gods. The opening riff of that song is incredible. It's this big, monstrous, meaty triplet chug, and it starts off great, but then you throw a dive bomb over it, and I'm like, that kind of kills the groove. And that happens, unfortunately, a lot. Most spaces where there would be time for a riff to breathe, it doesn't get to breathe because there's a dive bomb over it.
Yeah, I had that issue on Corporeal Affliction and the opening track, Foiled Skirmish. They both come in with savage riffs, but there's a lot of like just dive bombs going on, and it gets to be a bit of a distraction. And also, like throughout the album, it takes a little while for like leads to really become more of a prominent thing. Like not just like the dive bombs and like harmonies and such, but like solos. Asphyxiation of Ecstasy was probably the first time that I heard like a legit solo, and it was very brief. It was still really good. But as this album went on, I think the solos became like a little bit more prominent, but the dive bombs really didn't seem to lessen very much up until the last track. Like the title track is kind of dive bomb free, and it has 2 scorching leads on it.
Yep. And the first one was good, but the second one is fairly long, and like it hangs around for a while, and it's not like noodly. It's all very tasteful, like the phrasing on it. He sustains on notes when he's supposed to, and
big old Chuck vibes.
Yeah, lets things breathe a little bit.
And this does have like an interlude on here, which, I mean, I think the melody's pleasant. There's some cool harmonies on it, but it's in between Corporeal Affliction and the title track. You know, these are like the closing tracks, and generally, if you're gonna put like an interlude in between like those and kind of set up the last track, it really doesn't set up the last track very well. Like, it's kind of just like maybe like an afterthought that was kind of squeezed on here. And, you know, this album's actually got like kind of a short runtime. It's a little over 35 minutes. It's very concise sounding, but that song, I don't know, it kind of felt extra to me, but I'm generally the person that kind of skips interludes anyway, so that might just be me.
I mean, I get where you're coming from, mostly because the melody in the interlude doesn't have anything to do with the track before it, nor does it have anything to do with the track after it.
Yeah.
And neither does the vibe. Like, it's the only time where it gets, you know, all reverby and kind of spacey, and that doesn't happen anywhere else. And then one thing I had a minute issue with, first of all, the drums, well, I think they sound great. I'm not knocking the drummer whatsoever, but the mix on them had a lot of high end and a lot of, like, just every time that snare drum hit, I could feel it. There was like a little ringing in my ear, and I was like, that's no good. And then the other thing is the bass is almost non-existent. Like, I heard it a little bit in the last track, but those guitars are so out front. I mean, they're very riffy, and they're doing a lot, so I get why they're out front, but you kind of buried the bass, and, I mean, you know, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, that guitar tone is so damn nice, though. Like, I love a good crunchy, thrashy tone, but I wouldn't mind, like, a little bit of, like, flashy bass play or, like, just, like, more audible bass play under there.
Yeah.
Because, like, honestly, this band reminds me a lot of Skeletal Remains, too.
100%.
You know, it's got that sort of, like, drive and, like, the, you know, cool, fluid drum work and such. You know, a little bit different overall than Skeletal Remains there. But in that band, you can hear the bass as well as the riffs, and, like, nothing feels like it's being, like, overpowered. At least, you know, the more recent albums.
Actually, I thought the vocal delivery reminded me a lot of Chris.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
But outside of that, honestly, I dig this. Like, this had some really cool surprises, and I definitely hear some growth from their first EP, but I like the fact that they are still kind of anchored to that very old school, like, kind of Floridian, thrashy death metal style. And those little bits of, like, death worship towards the end on the last track are fantastic. So overall, I'm going to give this 3.5 stars, and honestly, like, it's a high 3.5. Like, it could grow to be a 4. I really enjoyed this, minus, you know, the frequent dive bombs, which, I don't know, honestly, I could have just used, like, maybe more solos and just, like, save the dive bombs for the end, like, kind of close it out, make it nice and creepy and Slayer-y. But there's a lot of cool dynamics in these songs, and again, great drum work, riffs for days on here. And yeah, it's just a nice, fluid sounding album. Like, it goes from track to track really well. Great vocals, cool songwriting, and honestly, it's got some cool surprises on it too. Like, I was not expecting like a big epic Nile breakdown on here, and man, does that moment hit harder than hell. If you're a big fan again of, you know, Morbid Angel, Brutality, hell, maybe even a little bit of Deicide here and there, Skeletal Remains, stuff like that, definitely recommend checking this one out. Solid debut, guys.
I'm going to go ahead and give it a 4. It was very entertaining. Again, very, very riffy. I can't tell you how many riffs are in this. There's
11 billion.
Yeah, there's easily probably 100 riffs in this album, and they're all pretty killer. The drum grooves are excellent. The accents that he chooses are excellent. I like the fact that while there are things like little screams and whispers at times, for the most part, it's just this big bellowing growl. A lot of groove pockets, even within all the technical play that's happening here. It's a very headbangable album. You're not going to get many moments, maybe in the interlude, where you're not banging your head, but for the most part, everything hits pretty hard. While the dive bombs were a little bit much, maybe save them for like the end of a lead or something, or, you know, throw them in as an accent point every now and again, but not like constant dive bombs, because you're burying a lot of really good shit that's in here. Nonetheless, I really enjoyed it. it is very Floridian. Morbid Angel was the very first thing I wrote. But yeah, if you're a big fan of Morbid Angel, Skeletal Remains for sure, Monstrosity, Nile, a little bit of Death, and just bands in that nature, you're probably really going to dig this. This is a great first release. I'm very happy to have heard this, and I can't wait to see what comes in the future for these guys. So 4 stars, check it out.
So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up. And if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there's a link down below to thrallsmetal.com. Our Patreon link is there. It is also in our channel in the banner in the bottom right-hand corner. But if you're looking for Thralls Metal stuff, you have to go to thrallsmetal.com. We have t-shirts, both old and new. The old ones are discounted, provided we have your size. And we even have hats, too. So if you're looking for any of that stuff, click the link down below.
Once again, tons of stuff coming from the Thralls of Metal, album reviews, discography rankings. We got the Almighty Meshuggah on deck, which we'll probably get into after we get back from Maryland Death Fest, where we will be. If you see us, come by, say hi. We'll talk to you for sure. I'm sure we're going to be posting shorts from there and videos, and probably going to run into a lot of people we know and YouTubers, and there'll be a whole big thing, and yeah, it's going to be a great time. But yeah, we keep doing all this stuff for you guys. We appreciate you. Thank you to all of our subscribers and our fans and everybody that keeps us moving. Thralls of Metal has become such a big part of our lives and such an awesome thing, and we have you guys to thank for it. We couldn't do this without you.
Yeah, you guys absolutely rule, and again, tons of stuff coming, and yeah. Looking forward to seeing some of you guys at MDF. So yeah, hunt us down. We will be out and about, and another week of reviews before that. So yeah, we'll definitely make sure we have a lot of content up before we leave. But yeah, yep. We're taking like that weekend off. Like there won't be any content right. Other than probably shorts. But
you don't see any reviews coming from Thralls of Metal at the end of May. Guess what?
Yeah,
we're going to be at MDF.
You know where we're at.
That's where we're at. That's what we're doing, and we're not going to be on YouTube really because we're going to be at MDF.
Yeah, it's going to be a blast. But yeah, thank you guys so much for everything, and we will catch you later.